Seamless.
All right.
Greetings, everybody, to episode 001, episode 1 of the 9CI Designstream. In these episodes, we're going to be discussing new devices and new things we want to build, problems we want to solve, as well as the methods and processes we use to do that, and as well as some of the motivation for why we want to solve certain issues or work on certain things. So this will be kind of a way to hear about how our process works and to engage us on that. In this particular episode, we are going to talk about a project that's been kind of on our minds for a while, which is the idea of making a Wi-Fi router that automatically adjusts itself to the minimum power needed and automatically shuts itself off when you're not using it. So if you guys have watched some of our other videos, you know that that in general, we are concerned and attentive about the effects of wireless technology on health, on biological life in particular. And there's a few different schools of thought on that. One school of thought is there's no problem at all with any of it. It's all 100% safe at all power levels. The other school of thought is none of it's safe at any power level. But most people kind of fall in the middle where it's so convenient and it's so pervasive that they're going to use it. But if there was a way they could use it where they minimized their exposure or were able to turn things off when they're sleeping, things like this, they would make those changes. But the changes have to fit into their use case, how they live already. And so this project is an attempt to minimize the impact of Wi-Fi on your biological operation, the damage done to your body, while also minimizing the impact to the convenience of wireless technology. So that is kind of an intro to the Safer Wi-Fi project in general. Corey, do you want to take us through some of the concepts that you've come up with for this?
Yeah. Yeah. So I wanted to first kind of go through some of the stuff that I've been doing in my own living spaces for a couple of years. Well, since being involved with this, and the big thing that I've been into is just having a quiet sleep space. That seems like a reasonable first step that people take. And the other thing I did was I use multiple access points, which are all turned down low, so I can still get full coverage through my house. And that, of course, meant running Ethernet wire, which is a pain. But once it's done, it's awesome. And so because there's multiple access points, let me bring up a little map here. Yeah, screen share there.
Yes, sir. There we go.
So I have my router, which is a Wi-Fi router, but the radios are turned off. And so this comes in from the modem router, and then I run it to a PoE switch. And then the PoE switch runs to each access point. And so there's 3 across the house. And I get good coverage anywhere in the house and in the yard with the power levels turned all the way down. And then I have a little timer. This is in the closet. So it's just one of these simple 24-hour mechanical timers. And then in parallel with that, I have a digital timer. So if it's nighttime and the router goes out or it's going to go out, I can just hit one of these buttons to extend the time. And in another place, I use those little Wi-Fi, or not Wi-Fi, but those little radio outlet
remote control ones.
Yeah. So I just have that hooked up to my router, and it shuts down when I push the button. So, and that's more behavioral. You have to remember to click that off. But it helps if you have a meter around, you're always aware of. I just leave my meter plugged in to the wall, and it's kind of a fixture in the room. And sometimes I'll leave the audio on low, and that's a good reminder to turn things off at night.
Yeah, so you use your RF meter like a reverse nightlight.
Yeah. Right.
So it's always
Right.
it's always squawking at you until everything's turned off. So basically, when you go to bed, the meter's not freaking out. It's not making any sound, and you know that you have a good, clean sleeping space.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a little bit of like, why would you do that? It's annoying. And it's like, yeah, it's supposed to be, right?
Hmm.
It's the thing that alerts you to it tells you or shows you what you can't detect on your own. So
Yep.
a little bit of annoying is probably okay. Um yeah, so should we let me just do this. So I made a couple sketches of um in talk. This was a week ago, talking with David about this project, and one of the things that I thought about or liked was the idea of having it be kind of a aesthetically pleasing, um, a little bit of like an art installation, and something that would look good and be kind of interactive, and so it would have these lights that would glow to represent what's going on in the RF field or the Wi-Fi bands around you, and kind of show a little bit of the like history, because RF is really fast, and even with the meters, it's hard to detect what has happened even recently. So these the idea is these would kind of glow to show, if in the last 5 minutes there'd been a lot of RF going on.
One of the cool things about this is if we're just concerned with the Wi-Fi bands on a product like this, the Wi-Fi radios in the routers already have a sensor circuit to detect the received RSSI, the received signal strength intensity. And so those circuits are already built in. And this would just be a way of displaying with some hysteresis, kind of some sort of delay, what the received strength at the router is and whether or not it's transmitting, right? These are like Ethernet LED activity lights, but for the
Mm-hmm.
wireless transmitter.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So, should we? This was kind of a outline I had made. So, sensors on this side. Um, this RF circuit detector is what David was just talking about. That's already built into your Wi-Fi radio for free. Um, but some of the other things we had talked about was having light and motion sensors, so that if say you're in a room, and if no there's been no motion in the room, um, you can turn your radios off, or if you walk in, then somebody's there, and you could activate the radios. One of the things I don't like about the system that I have is that it takes it takes a fair amount of time to boot up the whole router, and so maybe, David, you can talk about having full control over the radio, and maybe the difference between the router and the Wi-Fi radio,
Sure.
because those are usually sold as one thing, right? You you have a router, a switch, a firewall, and an access point built into what's commercially sold as a home Wi-Fi router.
One plug on the back.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's something. So when people think about their Wi-Fi, it's often their modem. Your cable modem, your DSL modem, or whatever. Um, so you have your connection to the outside world, and then the hardware, the box that you get from your internet service provider, it takes that signal and it puts it onto your local network, it gives you an option to go wired over wired Ethernet, which we talk about on some of our 9CI videos. And like Corey was saying, his house is mostly wired and my house is mostly wired. So you can distribute the internet connectivity that way. And that's one part, that's like one computer inside of the modem box that you have. And then there's another one in there that takes that internet signal and distributes it over a wireless Ethernet network. which is your 802.11, your Wi-Fi. And there's two parts. The little wireless transmitter guy, it has two parts. It has a little network translation part where it translates between the uh, the wireless network and the internet. So that's a little computer. And then it has an actual radio, which is what transmits and receives the wireless signals. And as you know, as most of you know, like when you have to reset your router or your modem or whatever, it takes a couple minutes for it to come back online. And that's because it has to reconnect to your internet service provider. There's these little computers inside that have to go through their boot sequence and reestablish the network. Um, and then the radio system has to come up. It has to be turned on and start broadcasting again. And that's one of the things that makes those, if you have a Wi-Fi router and you put it on a timer so it goes off at night when you sleep, one of the things that's inconvenient about that is, let's say you just stay up a few minutes late and you're in the middle of a phone call with somebody, you're doing a Wi-Fi call, or you're streaming a video or something, and your timer clicks your router off. Well, it cuts you off in the middle, and then if you want to reconnect, you go to power the thing back on, it takes a couple minutes for it to come back on. So it's pretty inconvenient, which can be good. Like it enforces a bedtime. It gets you to turn your dang phone off, which isn't a bad thing necessarily. But it's not the most convenient solution. And so a lot of people that put
the other things real quick, if I could jump in, if you are running Ethernet as well, and your timer goes off, and you're just plugged into a router, it takes your Ethernet down too.
Mm-hmm. Your wired connection.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which you don't need to shut off
at
night.
No.
So, so a lot of times when people put one of these, they put their router on a timer, it's so inconvenient, or it ends up being so intrusive that they just say, to heck with this. And they end up throwing away the timer, and they're just like, Wi-Fi might not be good for me and my sleep. But it's better than the pain in the butt that it is to deal with this stupid timer.
And because you can't see it, so you get, you run into problems once, and you disconnect the timer and plug it straight into the wall because you need to finish that Netflix movie or whatever, and then you forget to put the timer back in. So,
That's right. So, so part of the solution is that we don't need the timer. If we build all this stuff together into a device that's designed to turn itself off when it's not being used, we don't have to just turn off the whole device. We can actually do something like just turn off the radio transmitter, right? Like if you're not requesting data from your wireless network for a certain period of time, a couple seconds, 10 seconds, whatever, that radio transmitter can be turned off without shutting off all of those computer systems inside of the router and the modem. And so then if you do request data over the wireless network, let's say, so you're going to sleep at night, you put your phone in airplane mode, which you should always do, and your phone quits requesting data across the wireless network. This Wi-Fi router would sense that. It'd say there's no request for data. I'm going to turn off my radio. I'm going to stop transmitting, but I'm going to stay connected to the internet, and I'm going to keep the wired network going. So all of your wired devices still work fine. And then you wake up in the morning, you take your phone out of airplane mode, and it's the first thing it's going to do is go, where's the Wi-Fi network? And it's going to request where are Wi-Fi networks, or it can. This device would be able to, it'd be listen for that, and then it hears a request for data. It says, there's stuff asking for Wi-Fi data. It could turn the radio on in 1 or 2 seconds, very quickly, immediately reestablish connection, and then provide that data without interrupting any of the other functionality. So it's a way to get all of the benefit of having the device off without the inconvenience that causes people just to leave it on all the time in the first place. So that's kind of the primary goal that we're aiming for with this thing. And then there's some other stuff, like most of the radios in these routers, you can run them at really low power and still get full speed internet. But by default, they're just on at full power levels, and that's totally unnecessary.
I like the analogy of you're like in a quiet cafe, there's like 3 other people there, but everybody's shouting for no reason, and that's default Wi-Fi routers when they come to you.
Yes.
because unless you have a bunch of neighbors around, you don't need your router turned all the way up. But
Yep.
that's what you get.
And if you have a quiet or shielded house, I live in a pretty compact neighborhood here, but I have metal siding on my house, so it's pretty quiet inside. Um, so I have an RF quiet space, even though I'm in a dense environment, and I can run Wi-Fi at very low power levels to the point where my sleeping space is below 5 microwatts per meter squared, even if I have Wi-Fi on elsewhere in the
Hmm.
house.
Hmm.
Um, so
And
there's,
anyone who has like surround sound knows that that's um, a lot better than having one loudspeaker, next to your TV or using your TV speaker. So if just like that, if you can spread out those transmitters through your house, none of the individual sources has to be loud.
that's right. That's right. Yep, same idea. So that's basically where we're going with the project, and we don't know everything that we need to do this yet. We just kind of know where to start, and so we're jumping in. We got some other friends of ours who know software better than we do and stuff like that. They'll be in some of these episodes to talk about what they're going to help us out with, and yeah, and we'll just see kind of how the project evolves. So you guys we'll do a live stream once a week on this project and on others that we're working on, just to kind of touch base with everybody out there and get your feedback. Like, I'm loving the live chat. It's great hearing from you guys. And then we'll also be doing some other episodes that are more produced, where we actually walk through specific parts of the design process. And on these projects, we're planning on open sourcing all of them. And so all of the design files and project files that we generate, we're going to put in a public repository on something like GitHub. And so they'll all be shared. So people who want to participate in the design or want to take a look at it or use it for their own projects are welcome and invited to do so. So this will be sort of a community activity. Everybody's invited. Yeah. So we will be back next week. Not entirely sure when, but next week. And then we're going to get into a regular schedule for these design streams. And we'll let you know when we got that time locked in, and then you guys can schedule it, and we will look forward to seeing you on those. Yeah, so we will
Yeah.
see you guys next week. Thanks for joining Designstream 001. We'll see you on the next one.
All right. See ya.
Bye.